Hello. Hello.
Good morning. Good morning. Sorry, I was on mute.
Good morning. Good morning. How is everything going?
I'm okay.
It's a weekend, eh?
Yeah, it's a cold weekend. Yeah, anyway.
Ah, well, I don't think it's that warm here too. It's I think -9.
I think we were in like minus something, but feels like minus 20 something.
Okay. How is family over there?
Well, fine. We're fine.
Mm. Well,
See,
everybody is looking towards forward to the spring.
yes, yes. We're all waiting for the spring. Sorry, give me 1 minute. Sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'm here. I think Gautier is there. I mean, okay, I'm there.
Okay, I'm saying, sir.
Good morning.
Hey,
Good
good morning.
morning.
Okay, I'm saying.
How are you doing?
I greet you all. I'm fine. I'm fine. How about you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Just today there is a lot of meetings, man. And it's Saturday, man. You know, we have the SAP training today, and it's starting
Oh,
today.
okay.
And I think there's CSCP ongoing already.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, Hi, good here.
Good
You
morning.
can. Oh, okay. Good morning. Yeah, I can hear you now. How is everybody doing? So I think we are representing the provinces, right?
The spread.
Uh, so it's
Abi.
only Atlantic Canada that is always missing in our events.
Yeah.
Okay, how is it there in Alberta?
Alberta, we got another 15 centimeters of snow overnight. So it's
Wow.
fantastic.
Yeah,
You
I
can
learned
send
that
some
was
over
coming.
if you want to. Not
No,
generous.
no, no. You guys just keep it. I've had enough snow for the year.
Okay.
All
We
right.
have to take care of the farmers. Okay. Without snow, there's
Uh,
less moisture, there's less
Gauthier,
crops, and there's more fires. So you should be
meanwhile,
grateful for the snow.
meanwhile, you can export some to Africa too. They need it.
Yes, I hear the heat
They've been complaining, yeah, of
yeah, the
heat
heat in Nigeria
in
has been
Nigeria.
terrible.
That is a paradox in life. Like you will see like the amount of water some areas in the world have, and you go in the desert, in Sahara, in like
Uh,
North Africa. Like, why can't you just have a pipe that will connect all those different areas and like streamline things? It's
we
just
wish, right?
I
yes.
remember there was a time in winter when we're minus 35. I posted the temperature in Saskatoon, and then somebody posted the temperature in Lagos. It was plus 35. So it was like minus 35 plus 35. I was just like,
Extremes,
okay.
eh?
Yeah, I said, okay.
Give me a sec.
Hey, Okemute, I was meaning to ask you, this proceed thing, how is it?
Yes.
How
Um,
how is it and how valuable is it?
so it's valuable if you're in a change management role, as well as you can add it to like your project management role as well. But it was just like a 3-day course. You just take the course, like you do the 3-day online, and then they send you the materials, you read, you have access to their portal, and then you just get the certification as a ProSci certified change practitioner, I think is what they call it. But I think for me, I enjoyed it because, let me rephrase. So I didn't necessarily, I was planning to enjoy the course, but the course was packed. Like there are just so many
Okay,
things in
it
there.
is.
So it's when after that course, you can now go back and like digest what was taught. And then if you have opportunity to serve as a change manager in any project, then it now becomes more valuable for you. But yeah, it's a good one to have anyway.
Yeah, I've been looking at it, but yeah, in my head I'm like it'd be interesting when you are literally we're looking towards a change management role or
Yeah.
a role where you have to influence, because right now what I do is a bit of change management, but it's right at the base level. So we're part of the change management process.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
not.
exactly. Yeah, I
So
understand. The same thing with me, because it was my company that sent 2 of us for the training. After we did the training, okay, it was interesting, but what next? Then luckily one project just came on that needed a change manager. So they were like, "We have trained you. You're going to become change manager." So it was even when I was putting that project, I had to go and look at the book. What am I doing? Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Change management
that
fascinates me. No, sorry, go take on.
No, I just wanted to ask, how much is that if you want to pay from our pocket?
I think it's up to either 3,000 or 4,000
No, I think it's
CAD.
like I think it's like almost 5 now. But last time I checked, between 4 and 5 CAD.
Okay, good to know.
For me, my aim was to try and see if I could psych my boss to pay for it.
Exactly. If
Yeah,
no,
we,
if your company
we
is
do
paying
a bit
for
of
it,
change
yes,
management, and
exactly.
our change management is always chaotic. So I work in electronic manufacturing, and when we are landing a new project, there's so many everything. So I look at it, I'm like, we need some structure, but right now they have to pay for it.
Guys.
Okay, so that's I will ask you one day.
Good morning, guys. I hope everybody is doing great. We're just pulling folks from the. Yeah, I think interestingly, I set up this meeting for people to join or request to join. Yeah, because sometimes people will come in and then you see a noise in the background, they just jump in. So, Gautier, I made you a co-host so that if you see anyone,
sound is poor. Your sound is poor.
Okay, let me increase the volume on my side here. You guys can hear me clearly, right?
Yeah,
Loud
I
and
can hear you.
clear.
I can actually hear you clearly.
So,
The
you
sound is
probably
poor.
Debbie, do
you
you
might-
want to try leaving and joining back? Because I think we can hear everyone clearly.
Yeah. So, Debbie, you want to check out on your end or log back, log in, log out, log back in.
All right, let me
That
do that.
might have to resolve that. Okay, so I think we should get started. I'll try streaming on LinkedIn as well, just so we can have that visibility. Yeah, we've been shying away from streaming all along, but this year we, we did things differently this year. We've been streaming our stuff online this year, and I kind of figure that it's also helpful because then all the things that we are talking about is recorded and it's available for people to listen in maybe whenever they are available. So this morning we're going to be talking about the PMP, Project Management Professional Certification, and I want to believe most of the guys that are joining us are also preparing to sit for the exam or they are in the process. So this is an opportunity for you to maybe seek clarification. But our own attempt here will be to do a kind of a review of the changes that's happened since the PM Box 6 and PM Box 7 was introduced. So we have a structure that we'd like to follow. We'll do a bit of an introduction and let me see my agenda here. Give me a second. Yeah. We will look at PMP 101, just roughly the basics of PMP certification, and then we would look at the development approach and life cycle. Then we'll go into the overview of the PM Box 6. So I think the idea here is we would like to look at the way things were so that everybody is on the same page as to the things that we had currently, and then we'll go ahead to look at the review, the changes, and then the exam content outline, which is what our PMI now uses as the reference for setting up exams. So after that, we will have I invited somebody who has taken the exam and passed from our previous cohort. So hopefully they are able to make it and they'll be able to share maybe some of the tips that they had used and employed. But at the same time, you can also hear from us what some of the tips might be. And then after that, we'll do question and answers. So that's the way it's going to be. I'm going to post that agenda here in the comment section. I tried sending it for whatever reason. It didn't go out to everybody, but we can also share it in the comment section here. So that's going to be the way things flow today. Where is the chat box? In group chat. Okay, let me put that there so that everybody can see it. It says my message is too long, so I'm gonna have to break it. Okay. So let me know if you can see it in the chat box.
Yep.
So yeah, and then I'll put the remain in a separate one. So it's like towards the end of the session today, we're going to be talking about the study plans, and then you can ask questions as well. So Debbie, is it better now? Can you hear us clearly now?
Sorry, I was
Yeah,
muted. Yes, it's better now. Yes, it's better now.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay.
Cool. So, everybody, welcome. My name is Abiodun Oke. I'm founder of Serial Projects and the Supply Chain Industry Network. We help foreign trained professionals with resources, mentoring, networking, towards empowering them for economic integration here in Canada. I'm sure most of you have been in one or two of our sessions, so you're probably kind of familiar with most of the guys we have on the board. But all the same, we'll do a little introduction, and then in case you are meeting some of the mentors here for the first time, you get to know more about them. And like I was joking earlier, we all represent provinces here in Canada. So I represent Manitoba, okay. Abiodun, okay. Again, so I teach. A lot of the activities that I do nowadays has to do with teaching, but Serial Projects is a training consulting, and we support with training for professional development, and then we'll also do corporate trainings and ERP implementation as well. So that's me in a nutshell. And well, as we like to do here in Canada, I have three kids, two girls and one boy. Okay, over to you, Gautier.
Okay, I will open my microphone. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Gutsi Drikam Bwende. I'm a dad of three boys, so Abby did not ask me to do a girl because that might not happen. Yeah, 8, 6, and 4. I came in Canada about almost 10 years ago now. I can't believe the time flies so fast. My background is in initially in economics, macroeconomics, and then I went into some project management and found myself first job consultant for 3 years in PM, and then went into procurement. Then came to Canada, and my first job was what? Order picker, collecting boxes in a warehouse, and that's where I found that supply chain is a large industry, which is more than just procurement. Ever since I have been moving my way around, we are here today to talk more about project management, um, but there's a lot of similarities between supply chain management and project management. So I'm an instructor, and in my spare time with State College, where I've covered microeconomics, project management, operations management. So yeah, I will be happy to share the bit of knowledge that I have and how I went through the PMP process about 2 years ago. That's it.
Okay, awesome. Gautier. Okay,
Okay, so my name is Okemute Numa. I'm a project manager with a consulting company. So basically we help just implement CRM solutions for nonprofit and higher-ed organizations across North America. My background is engineering, as my first experience was like manufacturing, assistant manufacturing engineering or something like that. That was years back before I moved into procurement and supply chain, and was involved in a couple of ERP enhancement projects. And that's when I discovered the love for technology and project management. So I moved into business analysis as a supply chain business analyst, and now as a project manager. So been in Canada going on 6, 7 years. at the moment. And well, I don't know if it's a theme, but I wait for Bayo. But I have 3 kids as well, 2 boys and one girl. I'm located in Ontario. Pass it to Bayo.
Awesome. You want to break
Good morning.
the
Well,
trend?
unfortunately, I don't know what has happened today, but I'm going to start from there. So I have 3 kids.
Can you imagine?
Was that the criteria to have your panel, Abiodun?
Yeah, that was Abiodun's silent criteria. If it's not 3, you're not on the panel today.
Yeah, I won't start it, right?
Yeah. So, well, 2 girls and 1 boy, and they're all teenagers. Oh, well, the last one they're all teenagers. Let me put it that way. So, they're at the point where everything they like, I don't like, or everything I like, they don't like. It's the kind of thing where you enter into a store and they disappear from you, and then they only appear when it's time to pay with their own baskets. Yeah, so I'm at that point in my life. My background is mechanical engineering. I've worked in manufacturing for most of my life. Started out in projects in the manufacturing firm as a project engineer, then moved on to every aspect of manufacturing operations, production, process. So my core is around manufacturing. I'm a certified project manager. I volunteer also with apart from serial projects with PMI North Saskatchewan. And what else about me that is interesting? Yeah, right now I work for an electronics assembly, manufacturing assembly plant here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I started as a manufacturing process trainer. So yes, I trained in my spare time as well. Well, full time and in my spare time if I can afford it. But in the last few months, I've been migrating into industrial engineering kind of stuff. So which is where when I was talking to Wokemute about change management kind of comes in, because the industrial engineering. So I'm right now at the border of training and working as an industrial engineer where I work. But that's it for me. Thank you.
Awesome, great. So thanks all for joining in. I can see aside from the guests we have here, we have Adela, we have Augustine, Debbie, Ed, I think we have Prosper, Joy, Michael. So you guys can do an introduction in the chat box. You can share your LinkedIn. Like I always mention to people that every event is a job fair. You never know who might connect. You never know who might have information that will be of relevance, that will be helpful to you. So as much as possible, connect, and even after the event, reach out. So we can start now. I think I already have. I'm also streaming here already on LinkedIn. Until okay, so let me see. Schedule. Give me a second here. Okay, so I think I will just share my screen. Okay, so the first thing that we'll really like to talk about is the PMP 101. Basically, when we talk about PMP 101, we're referring to, the project management professional certification and some of the important information that you need to know about the PMP. Like I said, some of you already know this, so I won't waste so much time going through this. It's just like for somebody who really have no idea or not much information about what PMP is. So basically, the Project Management Institute is a globally recognized body that sets standards and principles for project management profession, and they were established in 1969. They created standards and frameworks for project management. So these standards and framework goes beyond just project management. They do for portfolio management. They also have even agile related standards nowadays. They discipline agile. Basically, the PMP certification is not based on any type of industry. There are several industries that it covers, from IT to construction. Even the funny thing is I actually got my PMP in year 2008, and that was actually my first professional certification before I got the one in procurement. And I found it so relevant to what I was doing at that point in time. I was convinced that this is the right certification for me, and I never looked back since then. It is important to understand some of the importance of the project management certification for somebody who is exploring maybe career growth, or you're exploring opportunities that exist maybe at the fringes of project management, even though you have you're working in a different industry or you have a different job title. Someone like me, I've worked in procurement all of my career, and like I said, PMP was the first certification that I had before any other one. So it is very relevant when it comes to uh, careers, transitions, or just exploring growth in your career at any point in time. So, well, just like any other certification, there are some type of requirements that they have for you to be able to enroll for this exam. And you can see it listed here. So the required work experience to be able to write PMP is 36 months of experience leading or directing projects. Uh, so some of these requirements here, it's something that people will be scared of. Like, okay, well, what if I don't have 36 months of experience? I tell you one thing, when I actually wrote my PMP exam, guess what? I have barely worked for 1 year when I wrote my PMP exam. So they actually picked me for audit. So, they have this audit process, right? Just to make sure that their processes are standard and they are keeping, they are compliant. Yeah, I mean, those who are enrolling are compliant. So I was picked up for audit. Guess how I was able to make up for the 36 months experience, because I never had this when I applied. Well, I went back to my school project project coordinator, right? And basically was one that signed the remaining part for me. And I did some volunteering somewhere too, and that all covered for the 36 months that they were asking. So it's a requirement, but I tell a lot of people that you already have what it takes. It's just that you don't know, right? So I passed the audit. Guess what? And that's how I got to write my exam. But before that, though, I had to get the 36 hours is it 35 hours of project management education. So I enrolled for a program like a core, a boot camp during that period. I think it was a week something, that we did, and so I was able to get through with that. So these are the requirements basically. But my point here is that if you are not working in project management like they have mentioned here, it is not really like, oh, you need to carry a project management title. No, you're in whatever role you are playing, there's some project management function that you are carrying out, and this is what they are talking about here. So that is. Go ahead.
If you allow me, I'm just gonna add one thing there before you
go ahead.
proceed. And that's probably another value that you might have by joining the PMP bootcamp that will probably be released in the near future. We can guide you on how you should write your experience. For myself, since I landed in Canada in 2016, I have been helping in a non-for-profit, like Cameroonian Association of Calgary, to name it. And there I was director of project. Nobody paid me, but I was doing the actually project management work, and I put it in my application. I'm going through building a house, and that's a project between defining your need, your requirements, working with the builders and everything. Those are some examples, so we can help you to word it in such a way that it will go through the process. So just wanted to put it out there. That's another value added participate into a bootcamp.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Gucci. So, without much ado, I think we should proceed to um the next step here, which is the development approach and life cycle, project life cycle, and that will be presented by Okiomite. So I will drop my screen here. Okiomite, I hope you all have the ability to share. Let me make sure. Okay, so you can share now.
Okay, just a second. Okay, I take it y'all can see my screen.
Oh, yeah, we can.
Let me make this big a bit. Okay, so the first, how will I say it now? The first topic that we're just going to talk through is just the development approach and lifecycle performance in relating to PMBOK. So the way this lecture is ordered, is structured, is that this, well, I call it a domain now, is actually part of the PMBOK 7. We're going to talk about it, and maybe when we're speaking more about the new performance domains that are in PMBOK 7, we can just touch a bit about this. But there's something called the development approach and life cycle and project life cycle or life cycle performance. Now, there has generally been some confusion about, okay, what is development approach and what really is project life cycle. I think the confusion comes from the fact that the processes and the life cycles are named similarly, and that involves the predictive, the hybrid, and the adaptive. But we'll go into that and just find those relationships here, and maybe that can give you some clarity on this topic. And please, maybe somebody should watch my time for me. If I'm going over, please just let me know.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so this is the software that is more or less likely the software or the application that is being used for training. I don't know if anyone here is has been a student with Serial projects before, but if you do sign on, you have access to this, and it's this notes that the instructors will be taking you through. So basically, there's when you start a project, just before you're about to start, you have to think through and say, okay, how do I want to start this project? What type of process or what type of what methodology am I going to employ in starting out this project? That's what this development approach relates to, and this relates to the deliverable that is an outcome of the project. So first of all is that the project lifecycle basically means all the series of phases that the project can pass through. So from start to finish. So the project lifecycle is more or less from ideation, when you just sit down and say, what do I want to start with? That's the beginning, and that's the start of the project. And all the related activities in ideation or in initiation, as you call it, is called a phase. So that project lifecycle can consist of multiple phases, and PMI describes the phases as a collection of logically related project activities. So, and usually at the end of one phase, it represents the completion of either a project deliverable or a feature. Let's put it that way. So I'm sure, or let me not say I'm sure. We know that according to PMI, there are three broad categories of development approach. The first being the predictive or your waterfall methodology, which is, as the name implies, is waterfall. You finish one phase before you move on to the next phase. Now, the names of these phases can vary from project to project, from industry to industry, but generally you have a beginning, which is like you define the project using this diagram or this figure here, you can see the predictive approach involves, oh, you define a project, you design whatever it is, you then build on what you've designed, and then you test, you deploy, and then you close. Now, those are general, those are generic. Depending on the industry, they could be called any other thing. But the idea behind a predictive approach is that when you're done with one phase, there is a sign off, sort of like a sign off and handoff, pass off to the next phase of that project. They're called phase gates. So that's been the standard for a very long time. Industries like construction industries continue to always use predictive, no matter how agile gets. There are some industries that will always be based on a predictive approach in project management. And then the next approach is a hybrid approach. So a hybrid is a combination of what is predictive, what is planned out from the get-go, and then what adapts to change as needed. Now, I like this diagram well because it just throws light on the whole hybrid method, and it involves, okay, you define what the project is, and then you want to release a feature of a software or an enhancement of any project you're working on. And while in that project, in that bucket of mini project, let me call it that way, it involves designing, building, testing, and then you deploy that feature. And then you go back, once that feature is deployed, you go back into design, build, test, and deploy. So this iteration, this could go on n number of times until that project is complete. Now, the idea behind this is that you start with a plan, and then while the phases in those plans are iterative, you build on them, you take feedback and updates as needed. So hybrid approach, I was in a webinar 2 days ago, and there's a decline in predictive and agile or adaptive project methodology, but there is an increase right now in hybrid. So basically, people are combining the best of both. You're combining the predictability of the predictive approach as well as the flexibility of an agile or adaptive approach. So the PMI focuses a lot on hybrid. This new exam actually, it's actually 50% waterfall predictive and 50% hybrid and agile. That is the standard or the structure of the questions. And then the adaptive approach basically starts with you define your project / product vision, what you have for the vision. You plan for just a duration. So you don't plan far out. You don't plan up to 6 months in advance. You plan, depending on the cadence, 2 weeks or a month. And you make that plan that you make is what you work towards. The plan involves, the circle here represents the continuous loop, the continuous feedback that is inbuilt in an adaptive approach. So while you go out and you build, you test, you get your requirements, you build, you design, you test, you're always getting feedback from the customer, and then you deploy. And then you go back into planning for the next features. So that's the idea of the adaptive approach, and PMI calls it adaptive anyway, but generally everybody's calling it agile. And agile methodology, I think the most common is the Scrum. That's the one everybody knows. But while Scrum is an agile methodology, there are many more agile methodologies that are out there. Your Lean and your Kanban are also agile methodologies. There was a diagram similar to this that shows the relationship between a product, a project, programs, and a portfolio. So this is your product lifecycle. For anyone who has done marketing before would know, okay, a product goes into the market, there's an introduction of that product into the market, there's growth, and the project starts growing, and then it matures, it gets to a plateau where that's a peak, you saturated the market, let me put it that way. And then after a while, that product starts to decline before you then retire that product and come up with a new one, a better one, or whatever it is that you do. In context of product management, you have project management embedded in that. I don't have that diagram here, but it's similar to this. Now you see in the introduction phase, that could be seen as project 1. When you go into the growth phase, you have project 1, project 2, project 3. There are different projects that work in that product lifecycle. Now, please forgive me. I hope I'm not confusing everyone. Your product is a deliverable, but to enhance that product, there are projects that are being done. So this gives a really broad picture, a broad overview of the interaction between your product lifecycle, your project lifecycle, and at the top here, it's all covered by a portfolio. So it's called your portfolio project. A portfolio is a combination of your program management and project management that are all related to the vision of that project. Anyway, that's what I call it, a sidebar for you. And another point here to note is when selecting a development approach, how do you choose? Are the features a one-off, or is at the end of the project, are you just delivering a single item or a single feature and then you're done? Now, PMI here is telling us we should take into account delivery cadence. So how often do we deliver features or do we deliver options on that project? And one of them is if we're done with the project, like we deliver the value immediately or in one go, then obviously you're going to be using a predictive approach to development. If you're going to be having multiple deliveries in that same project, so multiple deliveries of the same deliverable throughout that project, they could be interrelated. So with the delivery schedule, in that case, you want a hybrid approach or an adaptive approach or an agile approach because you have multiple deliveries of that same project. And then there's periodic, which is more of like a fixed schedule. So you deliver a solution or a value every 2 weeks, every month. That's a periodic delivery. That is your adaptive approach. And I think that's one of the areas where Scrum talks on. So they have 2 weeks or 4-week sprints where every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, there is a delivery of something of value into that project. So it's periodic. So, and then there's a continuous. Now, this continuous is basically, I think it's, I won't say it's an extreme, but it's a far out form of the adaptive delivery cadence and adaptive methodology, project methodology, because you are constantly iterating, constantly delivering. I think it's something called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development. So there's always something being developed, there's always something being integrated, and it's very heavily reliant on DevOps, that's software development, and the likes. Okay. So I think then, I think something to also, yes, Abiodun.
Okay, go ahead. So I just wanted to say maybe you can just switch to the next because you're also the one presenting the next one, right?
This next one as well. Yeah. Okay. So before I go into that, I just want to highlight something on the difference in incremental and iterative approaches. So I think this picture says it all. Sometimes terminologies can trip somebody up, and with PMI, you want to be careful with the kind of terminology. You want to have an understanding of what those terminologies are. Now, when we say something is iterative, it means that when you're delivering a complete solution. Now, this solution may not have all the features, but it's complete and it's usable. Now, then in the next iteration, you add more features towards it. In the next iteration, you add more features. So that's what this iterative approach is here showing us. You have a picture of a cat. That's a complete picture. It may not have all the pictures, but it's a picture. You can do what it is, what you want to do. The second, I don't know the difference between this first and two, but maybe there's some enhancements in the shadowing or something. Maybe they added a frame, but it is still usable. Then it goes off to the next. You're adding colors, you're making it darker, and then this looks a bit more, I don't know, glossy. So that's the difference in an iterative design. While for incremental, you're adding pieces. It's like a building block. So you're adding bits and pieces into that product. So you start with the first 2 weeks, you add the base layer, the base foundation. It's not a complete product. You're building on it until the end of that sprint or that session. That is when the final product will be delivered. So that's called an incremental approach. And it's good to note that for PMI or the PMP exam. So that's a development approach, and that's a product life cycle. I hope, see, like the PMBOK is huge. It will take studying. So we're doing the best we can within 2 minutes to pack you with this knowledge. But hopefully it's enough to get you inspired to continue on your approach in studying. Okay. So I have 3 more topics to quickly talk on. So right now I'm going into PMBOK 6. We just need to refamiliarize yourself on what PMBOK 6 is all about before we go into PMBOK 7, because when you have an understanding of what is in the context of book 6, it makes sense for book 7, and you can read the two together to get understanding. Now, these are the knowledge areas in PMBOK 6. So PMI calls these the knowledge areas, and there are 10 of them. I'm not going to try to name all 10, but I know I can. But there are 10 of them, knowledge areas. They are broken down that they are the knowledge that you should know while going into any project. And that knowledge transcends industry, transcends everywhere. Everybody that is starting a project needs to have what is called the starting point or the initiation / the integration management. So we'll just quickly go into what does starting a project look like. Now, there's something called integration management. Now, before you start a project, you need to have a plan for all the other knowledge areas of the project. That's what the integration management is not. The integration knowledge area is all about. It combines all the information, all the plans from all the other knowledge areas in the PMBOK 6. So those knowledge areas include your cost, your quality, your risk, your stakeholders, and your, what else? Well, there are 9 of them anyway, schedule as well. So this integration management is deriving the plan for all those knowledge areas. It cuts across everything located there, and it cuts across all the phases of the project. Now, these phases are your initiation, your planning, your executing, your monitoring and controlling, and of course, closing out the project, which is what we have here. So whenever you want to start a project, the first thing that PMI calls as a knowledge area is your integration management. You need to have knowledge about all the phases of this project and all the knowledge areas. In initiating the project, the first thing you want to do is to develop a project charter. Once you develop the project charter, when you go into planning, you want to develop a project management plan. And then when you go into executing right now is actually carrying out those work. So if you want to build a house, you start with initiating, you get your contractors, you get your plan, your blueprints, and the likes. And then your plan involves sitting down and doing your cost plans, your procurement plans, your risk plans, and all that. While executing then means the actual build of the building or whatever it is that you're doing. So integration management states that you need to have knowledge in directing and managing that project work, and also managing the project knowledge. When you start any project, there are some learnings that come your way, different ways of doing things. That is under executing, and that's a knowledge that you want to manage. And while you're executing, there's also monitoring and controlling. So how do you monitor the work, the quality that is being delivered? How do you monitor your cost? How do you monitor your schedule? And then how do you incorporate change? What is your change control process in that aspect? And then closing out the project, basically, how do you close your project? Project is done, the building is complete. Okay. In developing your project charter is the authorization for you as a project manager to get resources to actually take control of that task. So there are various things there are key artifacts that are needed, inputs into the project charter. And number one of that is the business case. You need a business case to start a project charter. If you would remember, or rather, the PMBOK 6 stresses a lot on inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs. So for each of these phases, there's an input, there's something going in, there are tools and techniques that are used in that phase, and then there's an output. So right now, when we're talking about the project charter, the input into this domain is your business case, which could be, I don't know, your business plan for the year. There are many ways in which a business case can come in. So as we say, there could be market demand, it could be legal requirements, whatever it is, there's a business case. It comes into as an input, and that informs a business need, which then involves you coming up with a project charter regarding collecting all those resources that are involved in the project. And there's something else as well. This, although not, well, no, let me just say, I want to say that it's not common in many projects. Maybe it's not common on my projects. Is this benefit management plan? Every project has a benefit. There is something you want to derive at the end of the project. So your benefit management plan, it's a document that's going to explain how those benefits are meant to be realized and how they are meant to be developed, or how do you know when your project is ended, and how do you compare those plans together? I hope I'm making sense so far. I like talking. I know it's as if I'm rushing, but if anybody has any question or a quick question, please just throw it in so that I know that we're all together.
Yeah, so with questions, I mean, guys can put questions in the chat box already as you go through,
Okay.
so that we can address those questions later, because we need to
Yep.
manage the time well, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think just give you an idea of how well you're doing with time. I think we're probably like 5 minutes over already. Yeah. So I mean, you don't have to go through it in detail,
Yeah.
because we need to look at the other aspects as well. But let's say you have 5 minutes more.
Okay. For everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So
That's what happens when you
you
have so much knowledge. Okay, Mucho.
yeah. So we'll still have you later, when
Okay.
to talk about the updates, right?
All right. That's fair enough. Okay. So thank you for that. Starting a project concluded or finished starting that project. I've mentioned and I've highlighted the main things about the project charter. That's one of the outcomes. And then the next point in PMBOK right now is stakeholder engagement. And this actually is one of my favorite parts of any project, because once a project is developed, you really want to know who are your stakeholders, who are those people that have influence or perceived influence on this project. So you want to identify those stakeholders, you want to plan for those stakeholders' engagement, you want to be able to manage those stakeholders and their expectations, as well as monitor their interest into this project. Now, I know Bayo was mentioning about change management as well. This is where change management really comes into play. How do you manage your stakeholders? And how do you even identify your stakeholders? Stakeholders can come from anywhere. It can come from the main one you want to use is your org chart and how it relates to the project that you're delivering. You want to first of all identify those stakeholders, understand them, analyze them, and then prioritize your stakeholders. Not every stakeholder is on the same level. There are some stakeholder needs that when they speak, you really need to attend to, and there are some that are drain on your resource that you give them information, but not too much information that will deprive you from your task. And then you want stakeholders to be engaged. You want stakeholders to be actively commenting and providing feedback on every step of the project. When stakeholders are not engaged, there is a problem, because when everyone is quiet and then you deliver, they would ask you, but why didn't you tell us? And it goes beyond sending an email update. You can sit back and say, oh, I've been sending email updates every week. I can guarantee you a lot of people don't read email updates, but you need to find out ways or tools in getting stakeholders engaged in the project. And you want to monitor that engagement to make sure that those stakeholders are constantly engaged, because people can get tired of the project and drop off at the same time. But that's your stakeholder domain. Your stakeholder engagement plan is the major output from this domain as well. It's actually a very small domain anyway, so not too much on that. And then I think one of the biggest domain, or maybe one of the most difficult domain, is your scope, your project scope. So this part involves, you've gotten your business case, you have your project charter, what next, really? How do you break down that scope into, from that high level project, how do you break it down into smaller chunks? And now this is what this knowledge area speaks about. And this works for any project. Now there's an agile consideration here as well, which if time permits, you go through. But in this project, you want to be able to monitor, manage your scope, prevent scope creep, as well as scope creep is unauthorized addition to the project that are necessarily not needed. So you want to be able to manage that. So you want to have a scope management plan, and you also want to have a requirements management plan. So the requirements that were requested for by the business, how are they managed? How are they tracked? And if you have a business analyst on your team, or you have some business analysis experience, this is where you also come into play, because at this point, this is where you gather those requirements that are needed. So you collect requirements from the product. What kind of product is it? From the business, what kind of, those are high level requirements. Then from the stakeholders are the individuals that need specific features on their project, on their products, or on the project that is being delivered. And then you tie all this into something called a requirements traceability matrix. That just means that those requirements that were developed or that were gathered for that project, how does it tie into the overall objective or to the overall goal of the project? So that really is your requirements, requirements traceability matrix. And then I think that generally is the gist of scope management. But before I hand it off, I would just like to talk on the agile consideration for scope management. So generally, with traditional projects, what they say is that requirements will be collected at the beginning of the project, and then if there is any change, that needs to go through a change control board. But for agile or adaptive projects, it says that requirements can be collected any time of a project, but they are prioritized. So basically, in the middle of a project, your MD or a sponsor or a stakeholder can request a new feature. That new feature will then go into something called the product backlog, which at the end of that sprint, if it's a high priority, it gets added into the project immediately. So those are some of the considerations between requirements and scope, scope management anyway, between traditional and then agile. And basically, I think at a high level, that's what scope talks about. So I don't know if I did well on time there, Abby.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
I'll
I
pass it
mean,
off. Yeah.
I thought you covered quite a lot of stuff. I mean, you've been speaking about the development cycle, project life cycle itself. So yeah, we could go over to I believe Gucci now.
Stop sharing.
Okay, I guess I'm up here. So we are going to cover three aspects, starting by quality management. So I will probably share just
You're able to share, right?
yes, I'm able to share whatever I want. So I hope you can all see my screen. So quality management. So I like the way it's presented in the 6th edition, but also the way it's presented in the 7th edition. So, and they kind of complement each other. So, what is quality? Quality is the perception of usefulness of a product or a service, and it's usually defined by the client, by the customer. It could be internal customer or external customers. So, and when you think of that first definition of quality, the PM Book 7 will focus a lot on that. So they will look at what is the dimension of performance. Is it in conformity with what it was intended to be? Is it reliable? So if you produce it over time, do you have the same result? Is it resilient? If you have some changes that happen over time during the project phase, are you able to recover and still maintain the level of quality? Do you have a satisfaction delivered to the customer? Is it uniform, and do you have efficiency and sustainability built in the process and the deliverable? So, and the PM Book 7 will define quality as a process, focusing on both the processes and the deliverables. Whereas when you go back to the 6th edition, and that is what Kemote was saying earlier, it's a lot on the ITTO, which is the input, tool and techniques, and output. And what is very important here is to see how the quality management is organized, and pretty much all the knowledge areas for the same path. You plan, you manage, or execute, and you control. So that would be the same case with quality management. So when we go through the bootcamp, look at what goes into planning the quality management, what goes into actually executing your plan, and how do you control the quality. For you to have an efficient, effective quality management plan, it needs to be aligned with some key deliverables that you had before. Okay, we did talk about initiation, about planning. So your project charter is the first document that is signed off by the senior executive team, saying, okay, we are going with this project. Your quality management plan needs to be aligned also with any other project management document that you have released. Okay. It could be your project scope, could be your budget, could be your sorry, Abby, did you say something?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sounds good. So those are the input that you use to build your quality management plan. Now, you'll need to define some tools and techniques. What does that mean? How do I collect the data to evaluate or to assess my quality level? What are do I need any ERP? Do I need any software? Do I only use Excel? How often am I going to collect those data? What are my decision criteria to say I am on target? My production quality is way off my range of acceptance. How do we run the testing? All those questions need to be taught at this stage of planning. Why? Because this is where you're going to think about your training material, your standard operating procedures, the area that you need to prepare for those people to work there. And the output, once you have everything done at this stage of planning your quality management, you have a quality management plan. That is the first output of that stage. And you have the matrix, the quality matrix. What am I looking at to say, yes, I have achieved my quality level? And your any other document that you need to update. Now, once you have a very interesting plan, very strong, very well thought, now you go into executing it. So throughout the project, you will roll out all those tools and techniques you said you were going to use. And that is why when you look at the second column of this graph, pretty much the exact same tools are transferred over from the planning to the execution level. Now, we add their problem solving, and we add there some quality improvement methods. Why? What we know about forecast is that forecast by its essence is always inaccurate. You always have a difference between your forecast and your actual, which means what you have planned will not go as perfect as you have planned. The question is, how far would you be? And you need to be able to correct those issues that happen and that justify the variance, and apply improvement methods to still meet your target. That ties back to what we mentioned in the PM book 7, which is adaptability, which is resiliency and sustainability. So that is what we are looking at when we think about quality. Now, the last thing that you need to know is how do you control the quality? So this will apply to any project. It could be in agile methodology or in predictive. Now, the main difference when you look at the quality control between those two main stream of processes will be when you do the quality. Usually for the predictive, you will do the quality control at the end of the product when you go and do the final receipt. You might have intermittent quality check, but for agile, anytime you release a feature at any iteration, you need to have a validation by the customer. And it's only when it's proved and validated that you move on to the next one. So that is quality management. So we go a bit deeper into the concept. One thing I wanted to highlight when it comes to PM Book 7, there's more examples. There's more applicability in the way they have wrote the PM book. So when you do the boot camp, you receive a lot of contents. But for you to be effective when you go and take your exam, we highly recommend give yourself 30 to 60 days and read through the actual PM books. If you have time, read both editions. But once you do that, you have in the U-Certify LMS platform a lot of exercise with answers. So you go and you do the Q&A, multiple choice questions, scenario exercise, and that will help you a lot to understand what might happen in the real world, because that is how the questions come in your actual exam. So the end goal of quality management is to ensure that we deliver on the expectations. Now, we'll talk about what are the project baselines. You have the scope, you have the time, and you have the cost. That makes your triangle. That is your baseline. And usually in the middle, you have the quality. Whatever you do or whatever the project forces you to do in changing the product baselines, you need to ensure that you're not sacrificing quality. What do I mean? If the price of input could be concrete, could be cement, could be labor. If it's high up and your product cost increases, and you have in that case maybe to extend the length of the project, make sure that if those two baseline moves, your quality is not affected. So anything you do in the main baseline of your project, keep quality as the core, because that is what your customer will judge you firstly on, and then they will look at the cost and they might look at the schedule after. I don't know if there's any question. Okay, I'm going just high level on
yeah, I think you are doing well, Gautier. We would like to keep it at high level, and if there's questions, we can do a deep dive later when we have question in a particular area, right?
Sounds good to me. So that is quality management. Now I'll quickly jump into procurement. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people on the call here are very knowledgeable about procurement. So essentially, you cannot run a project 100% with all in-house resources. It might be if you're working on a construction project, you will go rent a crane. You will hire a contractor to come and do your foundation. You hire framers to come and do the framing, and you are just the builder. What the builder do mostly here in Canada, the subcontract. So how do you determine when you will have the framer coming to do the framing? And how do you determine when the job is done? So you will need to do a procurement plan, which lists all the activities that need to be outsourced. Now, there's a making house versus outsource decision that you have to make. Now, depending on the process, if it's a big project and you are calling someone from outside, are you in a public or a private sector? The public will take more time to do some bidding because of international roles. If it's a private, it will be shorter. But at the end of the day, you need to define what is your bidding process. How long would that take? You need to forecast that, put that one into your schedule. So we will talk about planning your procurement. I will quickly procurement management. I will bring up what we have on procurement here on PM Book 6. So why it's bringing that up interestingly now. Okay, I know why. I'm missing an A here. Beautiful. A. So the first thing is to determine what am I procuring? Is it people? Is it materials? Is it anything else? Once you define what you're procuring, you need to know when you need to bring them in. Once you know when you're bringing them in, what are the tools and techniques that you need? Are you doing some biddings? Are you just is it an MRO that you are being on board? Once you bring them, you have the part of project, I'll say contract management. If I'm bringing an external resources, I'm bringing them to do a specific job. So you need to think of how is that job going to be managed. You need to think of the dependency between that outsourced job and the previous jobs. If you have a delay on the foundation contractor, how would that affect your ability to bring the next contractor? Do you have some rules built in your sourcing process that will help you to maintain that person? If it's in summer, the framers are very hot cake. So, and because they are needed everywhere, if you have a delay, you might need to pay an extra to keep them on the job if you are running late. If you don't think that at your planning stage, what will happen, you might have a budget increase that will push a bit out what you end up when you do your product cost evaluation. So, and procurement management does that. You plan, you look at what you need to purchase, how am I purchasing it, and how you integrate that with all your other aspects. So essentially, that is what we cover. We go into the input output. Some of the input will be your project management plan, will be your resource management plan that Bio will cover later today. You use your material or material planning when you need to bring them in, and you use any other company's documentation. What I mean, if your company has a kind of like a threshold for expenses for procurement, you need to consider that when doing your procurement plan. If you have some signature or DAG, delegation of authority restriction, which means you as a project manager, you might have a delegation of authority of $1 million. But what you have on your plan is over a $2 million, you need to know in your communication plan how to work with CFO or anybody at the higher level who can sign off on that, and it doesn't impact your timeline. So we'll look at some real life scenarios, and the end goal is to deliver the product on time, on quality, and have the satisfaction of the customer. So just high level, that is what that would be. I don't know if Bayo, you want to go over before I take the risk. I think
Yes.
If
this.
Barry is ready,
Yeah,
Barry
sure,
can go
sure.
ahead.
Right. So since you just we can just quickly can everybody hear me?
Go ahead.
All right. So we're going to be going on to managing resources. Right. Let me share my screen. Okay, Gautier, you need to stop sharing. It's not like a Teams where you can snatch other people's screen. Okay, so let's see which. Yep. No, let me start with this one. Okay, can you see my screen? Hello?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to highlight two things before I quickly go into managing resources. The first one is this guide here that talks about the difference between the 6th edition and the 7th edition and how they interface. You know, especially for like what Kimothy has said, the exam, because we are the interface between the 6th and 7th edition, the exam covers both editions in separate, in different ways. So you still have your, sorry, give me 1 minute, please. I need to move my screen. I'm using 2 screens, so it's making it, let me stop sharing so that I can move my documents. So I'm facing the screen that I'm sharing. Sorry. Okay, I think I can share again now. Should be better. All right, so yeah, so I'm looking at my camera. I'm not looking sideways. Yes, so what this just shows is in the 6th edition, it was pretty much the exam outline was divided into like 2 main guides. There's the body of knowledge, and then there's the standard, and the standard has all the initial initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, control, and closing. But in the 7th edition, they kind of flipped it a bit to basically simulate what goes on, because what happened to a lot of people was that you assume that the project, you must do initiation, then do planning, then do execution, and then do monitoring and control in that order. But the truth is, if you've ever worked in a real life project, it doesn't really work like that. While you're initiating, you have started planning, while you're executing, you're planning, especially when you go into agile, so that's why they kind of made it this structure. I just wanted to highlight that to everybody. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight is there was something that in the first slide that Mr. Abiodun showed. Okay, so let's see. So this is resources. In the first slide that Mr. Abiodun showed, he spoke about, there was something that was on that slide that I wanted to just highlight. Now, when you are going through your exams, I know we'll also talk about this later, but I just wanted to highlight it quickly. Answering questions should be based on the PMI framework, not necessarily on practice in industry. I know for those who are the exam will know that, especially if you've ever worked as a PM before, what you do in practice sometimes gets in the way of what the standard asks you to do. And then you are thinking of a question and you're thinking, what did you used to do? No, the standard doesn't want you to care of that. If the standard, all the standard wants you to do is, this is what we say and this is what the standard is. So quickly, I'm going to go into managing resources and team. And this lesson really covers, again, this is going to be high level. So I'm going to, we're looking at, the lesson covers topics, planning for and acquiring project resources. It talks about high performing teams. How do you get your team? And then project leadership, and then special project situation. So the first thing, like Gote said, when you have done your project plan, and then you have your schedule, then the next thing you think about is, who are the people that we need to execute the work? You know, so we can do the plan, we can have your charter, we know this is the end goal, we know where we want to get to. Because you also need to do project planning for resources in order to be able to do your cost, in order to do cost management, in order to do your risk. If you're a construction site, the risk, if there are certain stages of construction that have so many people, when you are doing your foundation, all you have are the concrete guys and nobody else, and they are working on the floor. And so when you are doing your risk management, the risk involved when the concrete guys are working is different from when the framers are working. And then when the framers are working, there are probably 10 to 15 framers on a site per time, you know. And then, like Gote just mentioned, you know, framers are highly in demand, you know. So you want to be sure that if you need to deliver a project at a particular time frame, you want to be sure that all your project resources, especially human resources, are available for the project as at when your time frame falls due. But one of the biggest challenges that we are facing now, especially with agile projects, is because in agile projects, scope is done iteratively. So if by the time, if a scope changes or if a new feature is added to the project, you want to be careful. So if not, as at the time of, when you get to the time of the sprint, you want to be sure that the resource that is available to make that feature is available, you know, which is key. Because one of the I work in an organization where we use hybrid approach, you know. So you want to be sure that a developer is available for a particular feature as at when you need it on the project team. So all of that is where planning for resources is important. And then also you want to make sure that your team is high performing. And then that now goes into what are the characteristics of high performing teams. And then you now go into all the different parts of teamwork.
You're probably not sharing the screen. You're
Oh,
going through.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I thought you were going to change it at some point, but I realized you haven't changed.
Okay, let's see. Let's stop that and share again.
Okay.
I'm not used to.
You're not a Zoom person, right?
I'm not a Zoom sharing person. Okay. Okay. So right. Okay, now I'm sharing this screen. I would learn.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, I would learn how to use Zoom properly. I'm more used to sharing on Teams.
All right.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the first one I've talked about planning for and acquiring project resources and why it is important. And then we now talk about when you get your team, how do you ensure that your team is high performing? Then how do you get to project leadership? You know, for project leadership, you now need to review the key components and the skill sets, because it's one thing to get resources for your project. It's another thing to be sure that the team is led properly. And then the last part of this learning objectives is special project situations. You know, how, what do you do in a hybrid team? What do you do with projects that, as Okemute will probably know, when you're working on teams that projects are in different parts of the world. You know, I'm currently working on a project where all the ops developers are in China. So we, the implementers, are in Canada, they are in China. And then time zones are totally different, and that skews your projects or your team, resource planning, because it means that if we have to do a Zoom, if we have to do a Teams meeting, or even a Scrum, Scrums are 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Canada time. So then it now goes into cost. If I'm going to attend that Scrum meeting, who's going to pay for that time? And so all of that now needs to be built into your project cost and your project risk. So let's just quickly go down. Right, let's see. So here, the project 6th edition talks of you plan your resource, you estimate the activity, you acquire the resource, you develop the team, you manage the team, and you control the resource. That's what the 6th edition outlines. So like I've said, you have to plan the resource based on the project. You have to estimate how long a resource will stay on a particular project. For agile projects, it's easy. Depends on how your sprint is. If your sprint is a 2-week sprint, if your sprint is a 3-week sprint. So if you are assigning a task to a particular developer, you know that for the next 3 weeks, it has to be available on your project. If the resource is not going to be available for the whole of the 3 weeks, then you have to make sure that the task itself is what do you call that thing again? The task is a task that can be completed within the available time that the resource has. You know, so all of that must go into your planning and how you estimate your activities. Then you now have to acquire the resource. Gautier has mentioned it. With that now, acquire resource now goes into procurement, because you now have to look at, do I have internal resource? If I have 7 tasks, 7 activities, do we have all the resources internally to be able to do it? If not, do we need to look for third-party resources to do it? And then you now have to, so who is the vendor? Is the vendor registered? So it's not the day you need it's not the week you need the activity to start that you now start talking about, okay, I need to acquire the resource. Because again, resources are scarce. There are people have, so you want to make sure that you already have a binding agreement with the vendor before you get to the date where you need it. Then you now have to, even after you acquire resource, then you now have to developing team is a whole different activity. That was no, so I've just looked at PMBOK 6, then in PMBOK 7, it takes it in a different form, but they're all aligned, and it talks about shared ownership. All project team members must be clear on the project vision and objective. And then you see, it still talks about making sure that you have high-performing teams, and then now talks of project leadership. And quickly, okay, I'm going to move on to communications, but I'm going to probably end. So these are the domains. Now, one thing that we must highlight for those who are just starting is that in PMBOK 7, domains are split into 3. For every major highlight, domains are people, process, and business environment. And as you can see, for managing resources, you have the different tasks. So most of it, of course, is people domain.
Yeah,
Yep.
Bayo, we'll cover those. Don't worry.
Okay.
We'll cover
All right.
those.
So it's just to show that the different domains. And let me see, what else do I want to highlight here? I've talked about the key processes, you know, planning the resource, estimating the activities, and okay, all the different artifacts. So one thing I would highlight before I go, this one, no, I want to go down to So just give me 1 minute. Yeah, so a major artifact for human resource is this RACI matrix. People need to be aware of what the RACI matrix are: responsibility, accountability. Oh, sorry, let's see. Yes, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. During stakeholder management, okay, Mute talked about it. A RACI matrix helps you know how to manage your stakeholders. Which stakeholder is responsible for what stakeholder is accountable, and what stakeholder should be consulted. The final thing for me that I want to talk about, I saw it here. Now, just give me 1 minute to go to it. Is the team. Yes, when you're talking of, yes, this particular slide is a very interesting slide, and everybody it's called the Tuckman stages of team formation. No matter what, every exam it has a question around it, and it basically talks about how teams are formed and what happens when teams are formed. So when you bring people together, what happens to them? They storm, they norm, they put adjoining here. It used to be storm, norm, form, and perform, but it's now storm, norm, adjourn, form, and perform. So these are the 5 stages of team development, and every team goes through it. As you go into the court, we'll talk more on it, but it's one thing everybody needs to know, because no matter the exam, it always comes out as one of the questions around team formation. Okay, so I think that should be all. Can I just quickly go into projects? Sorry.
So let's do it this way, just because
communications.
just because to manage our time properly.
Right.
So let's Okemute go over the changes.
Okay.
And then after we go over the changes, if we have more time and we don't have questions, then we can go back to communications.
Okay.
So that we can manage our time effectively. So
Thank you.
Do you want to keep risk management?
Yeah, both. Yeah, let's keep both for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, because those changes are also very critical, right, to go over.
Okay. So I guess I would share again. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes,
Yeah, we can see your
it.
screen.
Okay. So I think we saw this slide from Bio just now, and we are touched on it throughout this presentation. So the difference between the 6th edition and the 7th edition. Now, if we see right, I'm trying to look for, okay. Looking for a highlighter. Okay, so you can see this is the sixth guide, and it talks about the body of knowledge. This is basically the knowledge areas we're speaking about: the integration, scope, schedules, cost, quality, resources, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholders. So in Pinbox 6, everything you need to know on a project is grouped into these knowledge areas, and the processes are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and then closing. But then in the transition to the Pinbox 7th edition, this knowledge area is translated under the project performance domains here. Basically, it includes stakeholders, team, development approach and lifecycle, planning, project work, delivery, measurement, and uncertainty. The differences, I'll just call out the differences. The general approach to Pinbox 6 is that it was prescriptive, meaning it's telling you what to do. There's the emphasis on this is how you do it, not really why or what you're even doing. Remember, we said it involves a lot of ITTOs, your input, tools and techniques, output. So basically, people were going into this into projects with this framework under, okay, I need an input. I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to use this technique, and I'm going to get this output. And it then highlights the, and it was generally geared towards the traditional approach, meaning phases, waterfall. When one phase is completed, there's a sign off, and then there's a move to another phase. But right now, this new approach, it's more of a guide. So there are more of principles that guide your mindset, so, and the behaviors that reflect the general knowledge, basically, for project delivery, and includes all projects. So it's moving from this is what you do towards these are the principles that govern the project work. And then there were specific processes, as I mentioned, and it was very much process focused and compliance and regulation driven. While the PMBOK 7, this 7th edition, speaks a lot more of the interdependencies between all the areas and all the performance domains, basically, as well as an overview. It also includes commonly used tools and techniques, though. So it's not as if it's totally discarding the various tools that are being used. Those tools are developed, as I said, it's more of the principles that will guide your mindset. And it's also heavily focused on the outcome. So in not just the deliverable, but what is the outcome? Now, if you go through PMBOK 7, at the end of all of these stakeholders, performance domain, team performance domain, everything, it explains what should be the outcome of you applying this knowledge. So I know, I remember for one, like the team is that when you go through this domain or when you go through a project, an outcome from imbibing all these knowledge areas or imbibing all the knowledge on the project is that you have a team that is well focused and takes ownership of the project. So that's an outcome. So it focuses a lot on those type of outcomes drawn up from the guiding principles. And the project environment is still the same. So basically internal projects, external projects works. And as I mentioned, PMBOK highlights most projects. It's not specific to the agile, or it doesn't speak a lot to agile, even though it speaks to hybrid and then it touches on some agile principles, but it doesn't speak to that. While PMBOK 7th edition is basically every project. So if you read PMBOK 7, it speaks to every project. So with every form of project you are working on, this performance domain will always come into play. And then there's something shocking as well in this, is that this PMBOK 6 is for project managers, primarily for project managers. But PMBOK 7 is actually for everyone on the project team. So that includes team members, various team roles. Also, it talks project leads, product owners, and even the project sponsor as well can read this 7th edition and get an understanding of what it is. So it's very broad and value driven. And I'll go towards that a bit. And what else? Okay, I think tailoring is one. So in PMBOK 6, there is tailoring is like a, will I call it an addendum or just like a short topic or even a paragraph in this edition. But here in the 7th edition, it has its own domain. So it talks a lot of tailoring. That means it moves into a focus in every project is unique, and so is the development approach to every project. So it explains, okay, why do you tailor? What are the steps involved in tailoring? What do you look into while you tailor? So that's just some of the distinctions between these two books. Then another key one here is this first one, the standard for project management. This is where it talks on principles. Now, if you remember Agile Manifesto, I know Agile Manifesto has 12 principles. For anybody who has studied Scrum, or rather this Scrum, whichever one anyway, started in that value driven. So the way PMBOK looked at it is that there's no point having a body of knowledge that is okay for one kind of project and then one body of knowledge for another kind of project. The idea behind this PMBOK is to harmonize all those projects together, that you can read this book, you can get an understanding, and you can function in any of those projects that you get thrown into. And that's why they came up with these things called the project management principles. So it's kind of like the Agile Manifesto that has their own 12 guiding principles. So PMI now has its own project management principles, and I believe there are 10. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so there are 12, the same 12. So it's really just about the principles that are involved in projects. So basically, it talks about stewardship, owning the project, talks about teamwork, talks about stakeholders, talks about the value that is being delivered, talks about system thinking. That basically means you see the project and all the interrelated dependencies as a whole, not just one. Speaks a lot about leadership. Tailoring is key here. It talks about quality, complexities, what those mean. Talks about risk, adaptability, and resiliency. Basically, adaptability is how well you are flexible, while resilience is how well you recover from any change or any impact. And then what are the principles of change? So in a nutshell, the major difference between these books, and actually, again, the size is also another difference. The Pinbox 7 edition is about 700 pages big. I don't know, it's a difficult read. I don't know if anybody has read it to the end, but it's difficult to read. While the Pinbox is under 200 pages. Oh no, under 300 pages, about 200 and something pages. It's actually very easy to read. You read it and you know what projects are. Again, remember, it speaks a lot about values and principles. So in my own approach or my advice would be definitely to combine both while studying for the PM exam, because not only will questions be drawn from this, but this having an understanding of what these knowledge areas are translates into being able to better manage this transition in terms of project performance domains. There are some few calculations in this this 7th edition, but it's not as heavily focused as the ones you have in the 6th edition that talk about estimation to completion, estimate at completion, all those calculations. But I still think those calculations come out in the PMP exam. So I guess that's it. I don't know if I've touched on everything. Now, models, methods, and artifacts are now like, remember those outputs from the various domains in the 6th edition. So things like your project management plan, your project charter, those are artifacts. Right now, it has its own group. So every artifact that can be built or that can be developed on the project is explained here and at a very high level, and is just touched on there. So for me, I enjoyed reading the 7th edition. It was an easier read. It more or less guides project. It incorporates a lot about agile. As I said, hybrid approach is the way the world is going right now, and you need to be able to know what agile is to even be able to put imbibe it into a hybrid approach. So that's key. And then this emphasis on tailoring, meaning that every development approach is different, and you should tailor for the specific project, tailor for the specific organization, and also tailor for the specific environment. So in general, those are just the two differences. I'm not going to go into all the performance domains. So I'll pass it on to Abi.
Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, I think I really like the approach to the way you address the changes. Definitely one thing I observe with the PMBOK 6th edition is that it's a very prescriptive book. It's telling you, this is the steps, this is, every other thing in between that you have to do. And that's why you actually see that if you are going to review this 6th edition, as we are doing right here, it takes a lot of effort, in fact, to even remember all the steps, like it's crazy. So I really commend them for changing the way this is, because you realize that when you are doing an actual project, the complexity that is in this 6th edition is actually not necessary, because all projects are not the same. So you can't have this one size fits all framework that they are attempting at, which of course they step back from that. They stepped away from that, especially with the threat from the agile, methodology. They had to think about how to do things differently. Agile is very flexible. Let's just put it that way. And the moment they saw that, it became a threat to the prescriptive methodology of PMI, so they had to step away from that and also approach the project methodology in a way that it becomes more flexible for people to apply. And I think that's the way they are approaching it from all these things that Okemote has talked about, like the principles, the artifact, and all this other tailoring and things like that. So that way it becomes easier to be able to adapt it. So adaptability will be the key word here. So what I actually want to go over is I want to go over the quickly the exam itself. So let me I have to share my screen here. Okay, I think I'm a second. Okay, let's make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Can you see my screen now?
It's coming up. Yep.
Okay, give me a second here. My keys are in here. It will be loud here. I can assure. Okay, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yep. I can
Yes,
hear you.
yes, we can.
Okay,
hear you,
let
and we
me
can see your
share.
screen too.
Let me reshare my screen for those who are on. What's it called now? Let's see a second.
So while you are setting that up, Abby, I wanted
Yeah.
to just for me, for people who have not gained some experience or exposures in project management, I still find the PM Book 6 to be useful because it kind of go into those details that you need to know to be able to really feel the value of the PM Book 7. Like going into what is the breakdown of scheduling the relationship between the output of each of the knowledge area and the next phase, and how it how it works together in granular level. That is something that people who are junior or not experienced in the field might use first. And after they have like 1 or 2 years, definitely PM Book 7 would be more kind of a better fit. That's just my personal feeling.
Just give me a second here. I'm kind of a little bit struggling with. Okay, so I think I have it on the screen. Okay. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, it's going to
It's the
be a
same
little bit
screen.
awkward here. You can see my screen, is that correct?
Are you saying what
Yes.
is the PMI exam
Like,
like?
Yeah.
Okay, then we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so of course some changes also happened with the exam, the way the exam is made up, in terms of the question sets and every other thing in between, and that's what we're trying to show here. So the PMP exam is a computer-based exam with 180 random questions to answer in 3 hours and 50 minutes. So there are some of the questions that are actually not graded. So there are 5 experimental questions, not really marked, but they won't tell you which one it is, right? So basically, it's 175 questions that they're actually going to score. So, but the other thing that you need to notice, which we will look at in the ECO, which is the exam content outline, is like a makeup of the question sets that you are going to be answering. 42% of that is going to be, based on the people domain. So we're going to look at the items under the people domain soon. Then process will be 50%. So, and this is where Gautier, what you were saying comes in. Fine. When you are preparing for your PMP exam, you should expect this type of distribution in the type of questions that you're going to be asked. And simply what that means is that the PM boxes is still very relevant, right? Because you see, the PM boxes is focused on process, like I said earlier. So it even has what they call process groups, right? I think you have about 5 process groups. And under each process groups, you will have all this breakdown of the things we went over earlier, all the planning, the execution, and the control stuff. So indeed, the PM Box 5, PM Box 6 is still very, very relevant for anyone preparing because 50% of the question, that is half of the question they're going to be asking you, is coming from these process-based scenarios. So for this reason, PM boxes is still very relevant. And then the people aspect here is about 42%. So questions that will be related to people. So a lot of the things that Bayo was reviewing earlier, so resource management, communication, and stakeholder engagement, all of these are people-oriented questions, and a large chunk of it is going to be coming through in the exams. So here is the tricky part when it comes to, okay, these questions are going to be coming in the exams. The tricky part here is there are a lot of questions that will fall under all the different domains that Okemuche reviewed earlier, but there's no way to really say, oh, this will be people, this will be process, like something of that nature. You can't really pick them apart to say this is a people question, this is and I think this is really still the confusion around PMP, people who are taking PMP exam. You've broken this thing down into 50% process and 42% people, and then 8% business environment. But how do we know which one is people, which one is process, and which one is business environment question? It's really a very tricky scenario. So, well, they provided the document to help us, identify, those type of questions that might be coming and where they may be coming from under these 3 categories of the people, process, and also business environment. And that's what they call the exam content outline. So definitely, if you are preparing for the PMP exam, you have to look at the exam content outline to know, okay, if you are really, um, taking care or reading through those type of topics that will address people. So you can see the breakdown here: lead a team, people, empower team members and stakeholders, ensure team members, stakeholders are adequately trained, address and remove impediments, obstacles, and blockers for the team, promote team performance through the application of EI, emotional intelligence, execute project. So that is people. So all of that is people. So task 2, task 4, task 5, task 6, task 14, those are categorized as people. And you will see, like I mentioned earlier, this falls under the resource management, communication, stakeholder engagement. And then you have the process. So this is the one where you'll find a lot of this under the PM Box 6. And so some of the things that you guys have reviewed already, talking about the project methodology or the project development cycle, execute project with the urgency required to deliver business value, establish project governance structure, manage project issues, ensure knowledge transfer for project continuity. So all of these are processes. And then the business environment, you have plan and project compliance, manage project compliance, evaluate and deliver project benefits and value, and support organizational change. So this is the exam content outline, which will be the basis for the questions that will be coming through. So the one thing that I will quickly point out is you will imagine that it is a little bit difficult or tricky to say, oh, have I covered topics under this particular item that they listed here, the task they listed here. This is one of the value we get from the learning management system that we use in the cohort, because it actually has a plan that shows and tracks which topic you have been able to cover when you are preparing. So it actually has a page where it will show you clearly what you have been able to cover under these different exam content outline. So that way you have an idea of what needs to still be covered. In fact, it will grade all the quizzes, all the questions in the mock exams under this particular structure. So you know where you have weaknesses and you know where you have to improve towards passing your exam. Generally, we say when you are preparing for the exam, ensure that you pass above 80% in the mock exam before you actually attempt the question itself. I mean, the exam itself. But one thing I always like to say here is this: do not wait until you have covered the learning materials before you book your exam. The truth is that exam will never happen. And I've seen it over and over and over. If I'm waiting for the perfect time that I've covered all the materials before I register for my exam, the exam would never happen. And it's purely a plan to waste your resources, both in time and money. So it will happen that you bought the resource, you enrolled for the training and all of that. And because you did not pay for the exam in advance, you keep pushing and pushing and pushing before 1 year has gone by. So the strategy here is the moment you enroll for the boot camp, for the training cohort, also register for your exam. And I'm saying it from experience. Those who have gone through our cohort that never registered the exam while they were going through the cohort were those that have not attempted the exam till date, right? So life happens, and before you know, you just keep pushing it because you did not set that target from the beginning that I'm going to write this exam this day. Life will still gonna happen, right? But no, you already registered it. All you just do is push it forward, but not like, oh, you haven't even registered at all. And that's why I say would never happen if you don't register for the exam already. So I just wanted to put that out. So what I think we should do, because of time, is to see if there are questions and that we can address, but I haven't seen any questions up to this point. Yeah, I think Gautier mentioned here to recommend reading both the 6 and 7. I don't know if Remy was able to join. Remy is the one that I was talking about already took the exam, so maybe she wasn't able to join. But
no, I didn't see her.
yeah, when it comes to tips for the exam, I think that's one thing I would just want us to share here. So I will go to Okemute, Bio, Gautier. So you share your insights in terms of both in the preparation, the training itself, and also in the exam planning, I mean preparation strategy. So what would you like to share in those regards?
Let me just start from where you ended your last presentation, and that is that the first time I took the PMP exam was in 2004 or 2005. I didn't do the exam. That was the first time I registered for the training. I didn't do the exam until 2022. It took me and because I didn't do what you just suggested. I paid for the training, I didn't pay for the exam. And life kept on happening, and I kept on pushing it and pushing it. And it took me nearly 20 years to finally do the exam. So yes, it took nearly 20 years to finally do the exam. So I know what you're saying, totally. But when I did finally take the exam, I paid. I just went, I paid for the exam without choosing a date. I just paid for the exam. But so because when you pay for the exam, you have 1 year. You have a 1 year window. So immediately you do that, it gives you focus and targets. You know, you have 1 year. I paid in December. I knew I had up to November of the next year. I paid in 2021, and I did my exam in September because I knew that I couldn't get to November, if not, I will lose the money. So that's the first thing you need to do. Commit yourself to the exam if you would know you want to do it. Don't commit yourself to trading. The other thing you need to do is give yourself 3-month window. Give yourself a 3-month preparation window. Anything more than 3 months is going to lead to fatigue. Anything less than 3 months, but the 3-month window is just adequate. And then there are a lot of flashcards. There are a lot of when you get into the cohort, you would see our training provider has flashcards that you can use to remember stuff. Like Okemute has said, the good thing between the 6th and 7th edition is the 7th edition, the exam covers both anyway, but the 6th edition was much more focused on the 7th edition, the 6th edition was much more focused on the ITTOs, inputs, the tools, the techniques, and the output. The exam was totally focused in that range. You needed to know what the input was, you needed to know what the tools were, what the technique was, and the output. For the near exam, it's a bit different, although there are certain processes that you need to know their ITTOs, what goes in and what comes out, and what you need to do in the middle. That is key that is key for you. What else can I talk about? There was one more thing. Yes, I said it when I shared initially, and I'm going to repeat it. Please, especially for people who have worked on projects, it is important that when you are thinking of the question, when you are thinking of the answer to the question, do not think of the answer to the question based on experience, based on what you have done in the field, think of the answer to the question based on what PMI want. What PMI want? And that is, in physics, they say all things being equal. PMI wants you to think all things being equal scenarios. Because you will see questions like that. That when you look at the question, the first answer that comes out is what you have seen before, what you have done before. If you choose that answer, and the answer will be there. If you choose it, it's wrong. So you need to constantly think about what is the perfect scenario according to the PMI framework to answer this question. Because those are questions that trip up a lot of people. If you are new to project management and you've never worked on projects, you have an advantage. You don't have any bad baggage of what we have done in the field. But I think let me stop there. Those are my little tips. Thank you.
And that reminds me of my driving license. I failed 6 times, and that was because I've already been driving a lot in Lagos before I came to Canada.
Yeah.
Right. Guys, please help fill the survey that I put in there. I did mention that we are offering a special offer for those who have joined us today. So if you join us today, we had a discount for early bird registration, which ended yesterday. But we're going to offer exactly that same to those who attended today. So that's the special offer we have for those who are joining us today and also preparing to write their exam within the next 3 to 6 months. So that's the offer we have for you. But go ahead, Guti.
Okay, thank you, Abidin. I'm gonna build on what Bayu said in terms of tips. So you can see on the screen here, I have chosen to share this screen. The procurement management kind of summary. On the bottom of each of the LMS content, you have this summary that kind of gives you what are some objectives that PM Book 7 is looking at. And you'll see that those are pretty much what we do on a day-to-day basis when we do procurement in our fields. Negotiations, collaborations, communication, risk management, scheduling, scope management. So I recommend that when you're done with a module or a chapter, go back there and spend like 15 minutes or 20. Just look at the objectives and kind of tie it to each of the domains. So like you can see, a single task can belong to either a people domain or a process domain, or even it's in 3 different domains. So just something to keep in mind. Now, the LMS had that feature where you can take quizzes based on chapters. So you can practice by chapter. You can take the cards. So the cards, what it does, it gives you questions and answer. So I highly recommend when you are done with a module or a chapter, spend like an hour or two, play some quiz and do some